Hello, welcome everybody. I think we're all here. There we go. All right, welcome. It's such a joy to see everybody. So just gonna, there we go. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women Together. My name is Antoinette, and I'm the host of our Women Together experience. And really glad to be with you all today and each week. It's been just such a joy to be part of this continuously developing, evolving community. So as we just gather here, I know that there's about 70 of us, and there are a few more of us trying to get in the waiting room right now. So it's all happening. But as we do that, perhaps you can just say hello to each other and just type directly in the chat. The chat is at the bottom of the screen, and then it'll pop up on the right if you're on your computer. And in that, you can just say hello to everyone, say where you're coming from today. Looks like we have Spain, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Florida, Vermont. So it's wonderful to all be together from all of our different places and spaces. And then I love going to the gallery view, which is in the top right of the screen, instead of the speaker view, so that we can just see each other and say hello to one another, and just give a little smile and a wave. If you feel comfortable turning on your camera, I see lots of us smiling and waving. It's wonderful to see each other and be together, and just to make the connection with all of these wonderful women who are coming together from cold Switzerland, Montgomery, Alabama, Toronto, Canada, sunny Florida, Potomac, Maryland, Princeton, New Jersey, and I'm here in New York, where it's also a rainy day, so hence the lighting, and it's just a really wonderful place to reconnect with each other and to reconnect with ourselves. So just a little background on Women Together for those of you who may be new to our gathering. We come together each week, and we've been doing this since our time with Eileen Fisher. We've been working with Eileen, and she's been gracious enough to host us in a space in Irvington, New York. And we were doing these kind of in-person and online hybrid events where we brought Zoom into the main room, and also had 120 people or so in the physical space. So it's been a really wonderful way, since we can't really have these large gatherings together, to stay connected using these online connect spaces and our conversation space, which is conversations.womentogether.com. And glad to hear that Portland, Oregon is not smoky. So that's a wonderful, wonderful news, and wonderful to know that we are resilient and we make it through these incredibly trying times together. So thank you all again for being here, for showing up for ourselves, for each other. And one of the things that we do in this Women Together experience is just tiny practices. So the question that we really sit with is, what are the tiny practices throughout our day, throughout our lives, that can just bring us back to ourselves? And Eileen Fisher, just in case anyone doesn't know, Eileen Fisher has been a clothing designer for about 35 years, and has made clothing that has allowed us as women to feel comfortable and confident in our bodies. And then just going a little bit deeper than that, these tiny practices are what allow us to feel confident and free in ourselves. And so this is a moment to just take the hour, go deeper with ourselves and connect with each other. The first 20 minutes or so, we do some practices in the main room together. And then we move out to the really fun part, which is connecting with each other, and really just seeing how we're doing in our lives, and how we're doing in this moment, and just really listening, providing a space of deep generative listening for each other, where we can just see what's possible together and what's happening. So to settle in, we have a little singing bowl that we carry with us, and the invitation is to just get both feet on the ground, if that's possible for you, if that feels right. And then just settle into the breath, settle into the body and whatever may be coming up in the body today. Just listening to the messages that the body has for us. Being with that experience of the breath. You can lower your gaze or close your eyes if you haven't already. Drop your shoulders and your hands. Maybe drop the bottom of the jaw away. Just letting everything in the body relax and be fully present to this moment, to this space. And I'll ring the chime to hold us in this moment of stillness together, and I'll ring the chime to bring us back. Thank you all for taking that moment of stillness together. I feel like it just helps to land us in this space of what brought us here, what's important about being with a group of women, of being with this group of women, being with each other. Today, our session is really focused on reacting versus responding. And we talked a little bit about this when we went into our centering practice a couple weeks ago. We talked a little bit about it in our last session around embracing stress. And today, just being with what is, we're going to just dive a little deeper into this thought around what does it mean to react and what does it mean to respond, and the difference in that in the different parts of our lives and the ways that we may have reacted or responded to various situations. And we'll do what we normally do, which is we'll talk a little bit about it. We'll type in the chat. We will do a practice around physically centering ourselves and being together in that. We'll journal a little bit, and then we'll move into our breakouts and discuss. So that's really the outline of our time together. So I'd love to just hear from each of you what brought you to this hour-long space. And perhaps it's something quite simple that you connected with a group last time and it felt really great. Or it's something more specific to this topic of reacting and responding. And so what we can do is just type in the chat. If you haven't been doing that already, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little message button. And you can press that. It says chat, and then you can type directly in and just say, what is your intention? What do you hope to get out of this experience together? And if you're in YouTube with us, you can do that right in the comment section in YouTube, right on the right side of your screen, or right side of the screen. And we'll try to bring a few of these comments into our conversation. So Carolyn said, listening to others, leaving my own head for a while. I love the concept of responding versus reacting. That's from Lori. It's all about being present and mindful. Connection with other women. Eileen says that there's a powerful energy that emerges when women connect, and I think that's incredibly true, or at least it has been in my own life. To connect with other women during this time of being mostly isolated. Absolutely. Connecting and creating community with other women. This is the biggest challenge I face, so all help is appreciated. Thank you, Claire. Yep, living with extended family since COVID hit, trying to show up with grace and yet tense times has me reacting at times in ways I wish I hadn't. And I feel that is really a core piece of actually what we're doing today. So thank you, Danielle, for that comment, because it really is these moments when we're with, we're in close proximity to people, or, even when we're not, when we see a piece of news or we see something that's going on, and we just kind of pop out of our kind of present state and our ability to be calm and relaxed, and we react. And that might mean reacting with a kind of fight mentality of like, oh, I'm going to tell them, either online or, in person, having that fight mentality. Or it could be a freeze or a kind of leaving mentality, and almost like leaving the body. And Eileen often talks about and experiences this kind of, she just sort of leaves, and I'd be in meetings with her and I'd be like, oh, that's happening. I could see that when I spend time with people, what their triggered responses are. Mine is much more fight mode. I just am ready to dive into whatever the problem is, and I both fight and run, so it's a lot of fun over here. But there's a lot of wonderful hellos from YouTube. We'll see if there's some more comments as well. Bianca said she's been away for a while. Glad to have you back. Finding my center, healing, and getting stronger. Thank you, Bianca, for being back with us and for sharing that. Learning when reacting is better than responding, and vice versa, from Charlene. Absolutely. I am constantly learning that too. Yep. Let's distinguish and disentangle these words and see how they can actually help us. Sarah says, when overstressed, it's so easy to react. It's not always the best choice. Hoping to find a way to be in a better overall frame of mind to make thoughtful responses. Yep, finding healthy ways to cope. A time to refocus and get connected to what is happening. It is so important to be aware of our reactions. Oh, thank you. Thank you, iPad. I don't know who's behind the iPad, but thank you. I desire to become more mindful of choosing responding versus reacting. Beautiful. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Enjoy the connection for many different women across the globe. I wish I could just read all of them out loud, but these are wonderful, and it's so good. Just I hope you can read more in the chat. Yeah, I think so. I'll just dive into the topic a little bit, and we can keep typing into the chat what's coming up for you as pertains to this. Just a few more actually, and from YouTube, from Christine O'Brien. She said, constantly recentering as fires in California affect one of my brothers, two of my sisters, and living in the forested mountains of Northern California. We are safe at this time, yet, that was a very URGH frustrated response. So I hope that I shared that well for you. Catherine, as an emotional person, I tend to hold myself back a little and react to circumstances rather than engage and respond. Yeah. Oh, this one too. Andrea or Andrea, in my experience, women in business are judged more harshly if they react in an emotional way. So it seems important to me to be even more, or it seems important to be even more mindful of how one reacts. Yeah, I agree. So absolutely, please feel free to type in the chat. And if it's distracting for you to see the chat, then please feel free to disregard. But if it is helpful for you to see what's going on in the community, please feel free to connect there. And thank you for everyone who's contributed so far. It is, I agree with so many of these things that have been coming up that, for me, this this reaction versus response. The best way that I can think about this is when I was in high school, I was a lifeguard, and I worked in the pools for a while, and I took a first an emergency response training. And for anyone who may have had anything like that in their lives or has worked in that kind of field, you don't need a first reactor in that kind of situation. In an emergency situation, you don't need a first reactor. You need a first responder. So you need someone who is going to be able to respond with clarity and be able to kind of see and sense and hold the situation. And what I find in my own life is that I am a first reactor. Whether it's with my partner or it's something that happens in a work meeting or, just anything, I will have this reaction. And sometimes that reaction comes out at people around me. As I've gotten older and I've done a lot of this work, it's kind of evolved so that I can be more responsive rather than reactive. But it's definitely been a lot of work and continues to be a lot of work. So I thought, this is definitely something that we could explore together, because in this moment in time, when we are so inundated with, everything that's going on, and with the technology of being able to see so much of what's happening all the time, we're constantly getting news. And even if it's not our local community, I won't be looking at my phone or, but I'll get a little ping or a little zzz or something. And I'll just see that somehow, I don't know, Google News or something, somehow something is telling me what's going on in the world. And even if I'm not actually out there looking for it, sometimes I'm on Facebook or I'm trying to connect with a friend or Instagram, and I'm trying to just find how, what's going on in this person's life. I haven't seen them in forever. And this post pops up that is just the opposite of what I wanted to read at that moment. But I start reading the first line and I can't stop. There's just like, and that internal reaction happens. So, and then of course, many of us are in situations where either we are not with people and we normally would be, or we are with people who we wouldn't normally be with for a much longer period of time. And that may have brought out a number of different reactions in ourselves. So, and yeah, Jennifer, I do wonder if people who tend to be more emotional are more reactive, or if there's no connection. Yeah, I do wonder that too. And I think that there's also an element of, different personality types. We've also looked at a lot of different attachment styles. So people who have done a lot of psychology work and research may have a lot more great information about this, and they're wonderful bodies of work around this. So, really this is just a place to explore what our own experience is. So I'm not going to go too in depth about if you have this attachment style or this personality type, this is how you're reacting. But the reality is that we all have some kind of fight, flight, or freeze response. And the exploration of that can help us to actually look at, well, what is, if I just think about that reactive state, what if that reactivity could be the doorway to a new response? So when I have that reaction, what if in that moment I could say, oh, cool, it's a reaction. Here it is. This is the moment. I wonder what this reaction is trying to tell me and how I might use that as a doorway to respond in a new way. And that's something that I just kind of wanted to think more about and dive into a little bit. And I looked at, well, what's the root of the word respond? And personally, I just have an interest in that. I studied Latin in high school and Spanish in college because I just wanted to understand language. And the interesting thing is that respond comes from the word spondere in Latin, and that means to make a pledge. And so what I was thinking about with the word respond is, to me, it's coming back to, well, what's my original commitment? What do I really stand for in this moment? And what is really important to me right now? And what priority do I want to come back to in order to make the response that's going to lead me to that place? So that's something that I'm just kind of sitting with. But I still think, regardless, the first the first step is to come back to center. So whether that means refocusing or taking a little moment to pause, it's just coming back to center. And a way that we've done that physically is we use a lot of Wendy Palmer's lovely work. And I think she's the one that kind of planted the seed around the doorway, reaction being the doorway for a new response, because she talks about low-grade threat a lot. And she does an activity where you just kind of, you partner up and you grab each other's wrists and you just feel, what's my actual reaction? So what's my reaction to the low-grade threat? Is my reaction, I kind of pull back with my body? Is my reaction to just kind of like freeze? Is my reaction to immediately engage? You know, what's my physical reaction to this? And once I notice what that reaction is, how do I then lighten up? She talks about, we've talked about in here too, noble, awesome, shiny. So she talks about just kind of lifting up. So you can even do this, just touching the top of your head. Maybe if you want to just lightly tug on a little bit of hair and just kind of lift and just feel a lift in the spine and just feel a lift in the back of the head. And then you can drop the arms and kind of, and what I would encourage is as you drop the arms, just kind of feel the energy moving out of your fingertips. So drop them, but keep them out. So dropping the arms, feeling the energy move out of your fingertips. And then just dropping the shoulders a little bit and sending your energy out. So maybe thinking of something that makes you smile. And Wendy would call this being shiny. And she says that we have to practice this centering thousands of times. And it's a little thing that we can do. So it's just lifting up, sending the energy out, being a little bit shiny, thinking of something that makes us smile. And how that shifts for us. What shifts in our body. So just sitting with that for a moment and noticing what kind of response would I have from that centered place? Because it's not just about hearing that once or trying it out once and then, oh, it's done. But what actually shifts in ourselves when we open up to that centered place? And her name is Wendy Palmer. I've talked about her many times. She's been in here with us before. But really, for me, that's a physical experience because my reaction is often if somebody says something to me that I don't like. I talked about last week, I think, that my knees lock up. So, you know, my knees lock up. I kind of immediately, like my hips jut out in a certain way. And I just immediately, I either get defensive or I'm feeling shame or I'm feeling, you know, something that I just don't want to feel, or I'm feeling a need to be right. You know, I'm feeling a sense of just, you know, a lot of different things. So really just thinking about what is that that I do personally, and what is it that's needed from me in any situation. And I would venture to say that this is something I think to explore this piece that we have about women versus other people, or other genders, just thinking about what is my response as a woman. And I don't know, I haven't done a lot of in-depth. I know that's coming up in the chat and I think it's worthwhile to discuss, but I don't personally have a whole body of work around what our responses as women are that are different from responses as men. But I think all of us, regardless of gender, could do with cultivating a little bit more of ability to respond to each other than react to one another. And I also will say this, that I notice that in any situation, when I change my response, the entire situation changes. So when someone says something to me that I don't like and I immediately go into my fight response, they're going to go into fight too. And when I shift my energy and I shift my awareness and my attention, all of a sudden the space opens up. There's a new kind of reality that we're all in together. So I think that's something that we can just sit with and consider. And not always the easiest thing to do, right? So perhaps we can just try going through a little mindfulness moment and journaling to just explore our own reaction versus response and our own triggers and see what comes up. So if you have a journal, that now would be the time to grab it. I often say this at the beginning, but if you have a little journal nearby, that would be great, and a pen, or maybe just a piece of paper. If you would like, you can take this more as a meditation practice and just kind of, just kind of be with what's coming up. And just noticing that as we have all of these different stressors, as we can pick from a million different things, but we're just going to pick one for right now. And notice that often a trigger will feel much more triggering when there's a base level of higher stress. So, there's already this much happening, and then this one thing happens and it feels that much worse. So we're just going to pick something that's kind of a low, as Wendy calls it, a low grade threat. So a low level, if you had to pick on a scale of 1 to 10, this would be between 4 and 7, because we don't want to do something that you're going to get stuck in. We also don't want to just focus on something that's nothing, So let's focus on something that's between a 4 and a 7. And just for a moment, think of a time that you reacted to something. So there was an email that you got, there was a message that you saw, there was a person who said something to you, and you had that familiar reaction. Just think about that for a moment, and you can write that down. If you feel a sensation in the body, write that down. So any feelings, thoughts, or sensations. So feelings being emotions, thoughts obviously being in the mind, and sensations in the body being kind of the actual physical reaction that you have. That's Simba's reaction. So, and just thinking about that situation, is there a particular trigger? Is there a particular thing that this happens all the time? So when I say the word trigger, a lot of things could come up with that, but is there something that this triggers that's maybe deeper? Is there a lesson or something that's here for you? So in this particular situation, is there something that's being triggered? That you might want to explore. Perhaps it's a memory that gets relived, or it's a kind of desire to be right, or it's a defense mechanism, something that maybe you're familiar with, and it happens often. Maybe you don't even want to tell anybody about, and that's okay. But writing it down, just it's you and the paper. That's it. So you can have that conversation with yourself. And I'm debating whether to give an example or to keep going, but how about we just keep going? So what would a response look like in that scenario or that situation? Just what, if you could kind of be a more objective observer now that you're not in the situation, what might a response look like? And we're not saying that like we can be all perfect goddesses walking into that situation, but what would your response be? And I will give a little example. So just in my own life and experience, I didn't grow up with my father, and my mother was working a lot. So I like have, when people leave, I have this like weird reaction, and it's abandonment stuff. It's a lot of fun exploring in therapy. And there's when people walk out the door, it could be someone that I know is coming back, or they know they love me or whatever, but there's some little thing, and it's either like I get really scared that I'm going to miss them, or I get really upset and angry, and over different periods of my life, it's looked a lot of different ways. So my reaction has been, at times, my reaction has been really getting angry at someone for leaving. And what I kind of wish my response could be is perhaps having a conversation or getting clear on, a time before they're going to leave, so that I can plan it out and I know, and I just feel more comfortable with it, And so it's not always going to be perfect, but that's kind of my wishful response. So see where you are right now, and maybe let's just take a breath so that you can tune into what might you hope for that response to be. And for me, putting one hand on the belly and one hand on the chest helps. Just exhaling everything out. Inhale, filling the belly, filling the chest, filling the collarbones. And exhale everything out. Just being with that place of being a little more centered, a little more calm. What would your response be? And when you feel called, you can write that down. And then if you've written something down or not, just noticing what's a physical embodiment or a shift that you can make in the body. Perhaps it's taking the breath, perhaps it's getting centered, lowering the shoulders. Perhaps there's just a little thing, like if I can just, Eileen does a thing where she's like, if I can just wiggle my toes, I come back. So it's one little thing that you might be able to do. Yeah, I love Mary Kay just said step back. And often that for me, as somebody who does jump right in, if I can remember to step back, literally, I just literally step back. All of a sudden, I'm a new person. So it's what's the little thing that you could do, and just write that down. And maybe you have one, maybe you don't, that's okay. But just knowing that this is a topic we can keep coming back to, and I've really appreciated the chat that's happening as well. So we're going to move into our breakout rooms, which is really the best time of the entire experience. But just being able to connect with each other. And I often say this, that we don't know what each other had for breakfast this morning, let alone all of these life experiences or triggers that we might have. So just being with the small group that you're about to be with, really listening to each other. We'll give about 20 minutes because we've found that kind of gives enough time to connect with each other, but just trying to give each other enough space to be together. These are confidential spaces. They're not recorded or streamed. So you'll have that time with each other. And if you are on YouTube, we say goodbye to you now. So thank you, YouTubers, for joining us. And for those of you in Zoom, feel free to turn to each other, share your name, where you're coming from, and anything from this practice that, or maybe a question that you have that's still sitting with you. So